It was June 2012 and we'd been trying just a couple of months. Nothing major, like we just said we'd give it a go. But we were really pleased that it happened so fast.
We'd been trying for a good while actually to conceive for our second child, and we were over the moon.
I was already pregnant by the time of our first anniversary, but we didn't find out about it until about a week or so later.
It was a very much planned pregnancy, and you know, I was really excited to take the pregnancy test.
I suppose you just start to plan how your life is going to change and just plan for the arrival of the baby.
We have another daughter, Ava, who was 6 at the time. So when we eventually told her, she was absolutely thrilled. And we had waited till I was 15 weeks to tell her, just for fear that something would go wrong.
Had my first scan, telling everyone. Ben is our son, he was just over the moon at being a big brother.
Babies are precious in our family, as with most families. So it was a time of great excitement, not just for Jerry and for me, but for our extended family as well.
We'd been shopping for buggies and cots and everything. We just were blissfully unaware that anything could be wrong.
It was a Tuesday and our scan was at 5:30. I'd picked that time so that Dave could come, you know, and we wouldn't miss work and all, because I was conscious of us wasting time, taking time off for appointments where he'd need it when the baby came.
In my gut, I really felt there was something wrong, but then I thought I was just being paranoid. I'm a nurse. Sometimes we always think the worst. So I was kind of looking forward to being reassured.
We all went in as a family and we were just really excited about finding out if it was going to be a boy or a girl. That was all that had crossed our minds.
I went in on my own. As I say, I was 26 weeks. And a lovely sonographer, a lovely doctor, and she started to scan. We were talking loads, she was really nice, and when she started to scan, she just went silent.
And she said, I just need to go speak to a doctor for a minute, and I'll be back in a minute. And I said, that's fine.
Straight away, I saw her face, and that's when I knew something was wrong.
The tone changed and the pace changed, and she said that she wasn't seeing everything that she would hope for, and that was a concern.
They were able to scan in so close to show me my daughter's hand was waving at me.
And she explained to us that bone shows up white on the scan, and she wasn't seeing it where she should.
The sonographer had spotted that there was a lot of fluid around the baby's brain, and that I needed to call my husband, and I knew there and then when she said to call my husband that there was something seriously wrong.
And rightly or wrongly, they sat me up then and they started to tell me, rightly or wrongly, before John came, they sat me up in the bed and they told me that my daughter had anencephaly. So I asked them to explain what that was, and I'll never forget, she just said that that's where the baby has little or no skull, and her hand went up and she said anen without cephaly, brain. So your child has no brain and no skull.
The extent of our baby's condition was such that she would have seen it straight away. But what she was doing by showing us the foot and the hand and the spine and all these wonderful things was giving us the last few moments of normality with our baby before the rug was completely pulled away.
The first thing she said to us is, I'm really sorry, it's bad news, guys. She went through all the problems that the baby had. She had no kidneys and she had faetal spina bifida. It was one of the most more extreme cases she had seen. And she had fluid on her brain and there was no fluid around her body. Like there was no amnio fluid at all. So that's why you couldn't see much, because there was no kidneys. Once they're 17 weeks, they're meant to produce it themselves, but she couldn't, obviously, because she had no kidneys. So she is being crushed within my body.
For them to see like the baby growing and, you know, and then having to tell them that they weren't going to, just, you know, that they'd see that they were going to have to tell them that there wasn't going to be a baby at the end of it.
I just said straight away, it's anencephaly, isn't it? And she said, we don't know, we think so. So, because we had Ben there, they just kind of discussed with us, look, it's completely incompatible with life. You need to go home, think about what you want to do, and come back to us in the morning when you don't have Ben, and we can talk more about it then.
She said either, she'll die because her heart will give out under the strain of your body, crushing her basically, or in labour, in distress, because obviously babies can go into distress in labour, or if she was to survive those two cases, she would have been born in a lot of pain. And they would have the pain team there and the palliative care team to medicate her, and she'd last maybe minutes at most.
Prior to going in, I had looked at the referral sheet and I saw the words need to rule out anencephaly, and I just dissolved. Sorry. Because I knew what it was, I knew what it meant.
At this stage, I was 26 weeks, so I was 6.5 months pregnant. I was quite big. And my husband just said, so is Sarah get a section then? Do you section? So he didn't even think, put my wife through labour. So I was thinking the same, and she goes, no. And I went induced, and she goes, no. As it stands, you'll have to go to full term. So we were like, what? And in her lovely accent, in Irish Catholic Ireland, there's nothing we can do for you here until you're full term.
And she said, the doctor said to us, you have two options. You can either continue, and we'll scan you weekly and check for a heartbeat, and if you get to the stage that we can induce you, we will, and to take it that way, or else you can travel.
I went back to my home office. I started on Google, ended up on websites that I really shouldn't have been on, ended up talking to people that I really shouldn't have been talking about. And that administration side with no feeling, no anything, the emptiness of having to make phone calls to people in another country who were trying to give a bit of compassion, but ultimately they're talking to some Irish guy, and the connection isn't there that we had with some of the people in Holles Street, but unfortunately they had to show us the door.
It was the Offences Against the Person Act I've since discovered is what engendered all the fear in all these people, that by assisting me to terminate a pregnancy, they faced the prospect of a possibility of up to 14 years in prison.
It wasn't until everything got turned around 15 minutes later by it being explained to us that this couldn't happen in this jurisdiction, as it was told to us. And then I said, well, we can go to Belfast. I thought, that's not so far away, at least we can do that. And then Midway said, no, not in Ireland, you have to go overseas.
So again, just shocked, just what are you talking about? And she started just to explain. You go to England, they have no problem with a fetal abnormality. They will induce your baby. Your baby will be born there, and you'll mourn your baby and you'll cremate your baby or whatever over there. So we were like sitting in front of a conveyor belt of all this information, really, that someone was going to tell us this is just a joke.
We felt like fugitives, we really did. We didn't want anybody to know where we were going in case they tried to stop us. We had to leave the jurisdiction, obviously. That phrase made it very clear to us it wasn't available in Ireland.
And then we went on the boat at the 2:30 in the morning, sailing. And my fiancé drove, we got the boat to Holyhead, and he drove up through the night, then to Liverpool. So he was awake effectively maybe 24 hours by the time we got there.
We went through checking in and going through the security and feeling rotten and going and waiting on the gate and for your plane to board, and then looking around and you just see businessmen and people going on weekends away, and it just felt so wrong that we were in that situation.
So when we arrived over there, we kind of went straight over to the hospital, and I remember just the reassurance of actually being there and the midwives talking to us there and just saying, like, this would never happen in England.
I was being fed by the hospital. My lunch arrived just after they had left, and it had 2 tablets on it for me to take to start the procedure, to start the labour. So I'm looking at these beside my lunch, sitting in the room on my own, pushing these tablets around, because I know that once I take them, there's actually no going back. I can't change my mind. So it was really a very defining moment for me. And it was a lonely time just by coincidence. They happened to be gone out of the room.
And they brought us in to do the procedure where they'd stop her heart. That was really sad, because it was really definite, like, you know, this was really happening. So they were very kind, you know, they took their time and they spoke to us throughout, and it was very quick in the end. You know, it was, they just had it done, and it was done, you know, it took less than 3 minutes, I think, to kind of get it done, and she just said she's gone now, which is obviously really, that was a hard moment.
It's kind of like a normal labour, actually, which was nice in a way that you kind of got to have a natural birth. But I remember being really scared. Like, just little things you hadn't prepared yourself for, like bringing a little outfit for him, and I just remember.
She was born then at 9 in the morning. And I still remember, you can hear people outside going to work. You could hear the traffic. And it was just, like, it was very peaceful when she was born. She was born very suddenly in the end. I didn't realise that she was so, you know, so ready to be born, and I had sent the midwife off to get me something, and when she came back she'd been born. Dave had caught her, which was nice, I suppose, that her dad had delivered her really. And he cut her cord.
When Joshua was born and the midwives dressed him, you know, we brought him back to the room in the hospital. We spent time as a family. A meal was brought in for us. And I remember one of the midwives said to us, no matter what anybody says to you, you're a mammy and a daddy now. And that was really, really important to us.
You know, when I went up to the anaesthetic room, I remember being really, really, really upset, and I was sobbing. And the people, the staff, they were kind of looking at me, and I think they must have been thinking, why are you so upset? And I actually said it to them. I said, you know, I wanted this baby, but the baby's not going to survive.
We kind of said, will you just take him away and maybe dress him? Because we didn't know what he was going to look like. And he was beautiful, wasn't he? He was almost perfect. He just had a little hat on him. He was tiny. And we spent a few hours with him. And sorry.
We were there for about an hour maybe, and then they said, right, you can go now. And if I had been in my right mind, I would have just said, well, look, we've got nowhere to go because we're not getting our flight back till tonight. But I was just like, okay. But then we had nowhere to go. So we just got a taxi into the centre of Birmingham, and we literally just wandered the streets and went from coffee shop to coffee shop. And I remember at one stage we actually contemplated going to the cinema just so we could sit down somewhere.
So, we got to spend a few hours with him, but we were due to fly out the next morning, so we had to leave the hospital, which was horrible, leave him behind. And I remember just kind of being in a hotel room that night. You've just given birth, and you know what I mean, you should be being looked after.
And they did everything they could to make it as bearable as possible for us, but there came a point where we had to leave the hospital and leave him behind. And to me, that was the hardest part of the whole thing, was leaving him behind.
And some people have, you know, flights booked for that evening, so they have to go, whether they're ready to or not. I discharged myself from hospital because I just wanted to get home, to my own bed, to my daughter, to my family. Whereas if you were able to do that in an Irish hospital, you wouldn't probably feel the need to rush out as fast.
To go back to an awful hotel room in the evening, that was the worst pain, you know. And then flying back on a cheap flight from Liverpool to Dublin on a Saturday morning with hen parties, celebrating and having a great time. And we were just after going through the worst period of our lives. That was the worst thing ever.
All our family and friends, because we were so open with everybody, would have loved a proper ceremony and would have loved to support us. But that wasn't really an option, you know, because with Liverpool there's still an issue about bringing bodies home, and so all of that just really compounds the absolute misery and heartache that couples have to go through.
We then flew back for the cremation of Aidan, and again we had to leave him there.
Yeah.
We had to leave him there, and the ashes were posted back to Dublin. We weren't allowed to bring them on the plane and carry them with us.
We don't have a grave for our son. His cremated remains were delivered by courier a week or two after he was born. We'd still not returned to work at that stage, and a courier van arrived at the door with a jiffy envelope that had a cardboard box in it in which his cremated remains are.
We've chatted to the staff in the hospital since. They're all so lovely. They want to help you. They really do. 99.9% of them want to help you, but their hands are tied. But at the time, though, we felt like we were so alone. And also you feel, am I really unlucky? Are we the only people this has happened? Are we the only people that's ever had a fetal abnormality?
Conditions that are incompatible with life, fetal abnormalities, are not that uncommon. And carefully, the condition that Joshua had is probably the most common of the fetal abnormalities.
There's nothing you can do to change the diagnosis. Everybody, every day, all over the world gets this diagnosis. But the fact that you have to leave your own country and your own comfort and your family and your friends is just horrendous. It's really awful.
To be given the diagnosis that the baby wasn't going to live is the most horrible news you can ever get. It's heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. And then to be told there was nothing they could do for you, that you had to leave your country of, you know, where you work, where all your family, where all your friends are, where your support system is, where our two boys were. They should have been on that little journey with us, and it should have been here. And we should have been able to tell them the truth about what was happening. So to have to leave, it was absolutely horrific. It just added so much more pain to the whole situation.
Ireland and Malta are the only countries in the EU where this happens in. The only countries. So, you know, this had happened to me in Germany, England, Italy, anywhere. I would have just been sent home to digest what they had just told me about my daughter. And then I would have been brought in a day or two and induced. Baby born, mourned, family around you. It still would have been horrific, don't get me wrong, but it wouldn't have had an added other miserable element to it.
I can't rest, I even feel I can't get over my own anger until it's changed, because it's happening to people every week, and it's just so unfair.
Anecdotally, they say there could be 1,000 couples a year that travel, but we can't get statistics on it, because once you leave the care of your maternity hospital, you're not on their records anymore.
Government in the last 13 years has consisted of pretty much every major political party in the country. So they've all chosen to ignore this. They've all chosen to pretend that it's not really happening.
Abortion is a conversation, and there's two sides to it, and you can understand pro-life and you can understand the other side of it. This is a completely separate subject that needs to be given the consideration it deserves at the end of the day.
And I suppose it's just, we need more people to understand and realise, and just I suppose that could be the start, you know, stepping stone is contact your TDs. And
it's shameful. And when I saw the other women from TFMR appearing on the Late Late Show and appearing, being on the radio and in the press 11 years after we had gone through ours, I felt a certain amount of shame that we hadn't been able to change things for them.
Who would make a woman grow a baby just to watch it suffer and die? It's barbaric, and it really has to stop.